Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, monumiluanji, namaste, jambo, bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We are coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We are so delighted and so very honored that you're joining us in our mission to help families grow closer through reading. Please be sure to tell all of your family and friends about the show. And if you can, subscribe to the show on the iHeartRadio app, Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, wherever you find your podcast. Our guest today is Varsha Bajaj. She is here to celebrate her middle grade novel called Thirst. Before we invite Varsha into the studio, we want to let you know that this episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast is brought to you by Ancient Eats, an edible exploration of the world, written by Stephanie Hansen and published by our friends at History Unboxed. Go on a mouth-watering journey through the ancient world with this family-friendly cookbook. Each of the more than 100 recipes is inspired by delicious historical dishes and adapted for ease of preparation in the modern kitchen. Taste your way through 18 cultures as you feed your mind with mythical origins and the historical significance of food from around the world and across tens of thousands of years. Make tamales like the Olmecs and curry like the people of the Indus Valley civilization of India. Enjoy feasts, drinks, desserts, and simple snacks as you read about their ancient origins. This is an absolutely delicious way to explore history and get your kids interested in history. Ancient Eats, an edible exploration of the world by Stephanie Hansen and our friends at History Unboxed. This episode of the podcast is also brought to you by Fly, 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 Little Birdie, the beautiful and heartwarming picture book by Jacob Monroe. Fly into the world of the baby bird who is ready to fly everywhere. Fly, 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 Little Birdie is a short and sweet rhyming story about a little bird who flies around to see the world and its many iconic landmarks. Read along and discover the adventure and the love this little bird has for her parents. At the beginning of August, Jacob joined us at the Buttonwood Park Zoo to celebrate episode 1500 of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. And the families there just loved his read aloud. They loved the book. They loved Jacob. Jacob's a wonderful guy. He's a great author, a great songwriter, and he is serving our nation as a member of the United States Marine Corps. Check out the book today, Fly, 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 Little Birdie. It's a delightful addition to your family library. Join us right now from beautiful Houston in the state of Texas. Our guest is here today to celebrate her new middle grade novel. It's called Thirst. Please welcome to the show, Varsha Bajaj. Hey, Varsha, how are you?
Hey, Jed, I'm so excited to speak with you and to all your listeners.
I'm excited too. Thirst. That is a very simple title, but in my mind, it's a very powerful title.
I agree. I totally agree. So, thirst works at many levels, and this book is about a very brave girl's belief that water is for everyone. And thirst refers to her thirst for water, of course, but also for opportunity and for education.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I don't know, and it's only been in my adulthood that I've come to really realize and appreciate the fact that being able to walk into our kitchen and turn on the tap and having clean, healthy water, that is not the norm around the world. And it was really kind of horrifying me to realize that. I don't know the exact numbers, but I know that there are millions of people around the world who don't have regular access to clean water.
So You're right. It is not a norm. In fact, I would go so far as to say that it's a privilege.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I say that is because it was in 2019 when I started the research for this project that I learned that over 700 million people across the globe do not have access to clean, safe water. Now, I chose that number because it's a little more optimistic than the other number that you will also find, which is some people say it's more like 800 million. Regardless, whether it's 700 plus or 800 plus, that's a lot of people. And it kind of is 1 in 10.
Mm-hmm.
And that to me was shocking.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just shocking. So you're right. We don't think about getting a glass of water or brushing our teeth or having a shower or doing the laundry, all of these things that require water, and we are privileged.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I'm thinking just here in my home, and we have this very simple above ground pool, but there's 14,000 gallons of water in it. And, and to think that there are villages in India and Africa and parts of Asia, parts of South America, that would, is more the water than everybody in that village has in a month.
You're right. You're completely right. And, yes. And, with all of the global crises, this situation affects the poor more than it affects people with money. Mm-hmm. And I think that in some ways the water crisis is starting to be felt even in richer countries. We had the Flint mm-hmm. drinking water crisis, which I don't believe is completely resolved. Mm-hmm. We have the New York Times on Sunday had an article about Lake Mead and how the water levels are falling. So I don't think that it's only an issue in Asia or Africa. I think that, it's not knocking on our doors like it is with certain parts of the world. But I don't think that it's completely unfamiliar even to people in the U.S.
Mm-hmm. And the other thing you mentioned is that there are people who are thirsting for education and opportunity. And I really I'm intrigued. I'd love to know a little bit more about this girl that we're going to meet in your book.
Okay. So, what I realized as I was doing research was the water crisis affects women and girls to a larger extent because in a lot of villages, societies, it's the women who spend their day collecting water. Sometimes in some parts of Africa or some parts of rural India, they walk miles to collect water. Now, when you are spending all of those hours in a day collecting water, obviously going to school becomes difficult. Mm-hmm. So you have girls who drop out to assist the mother, or if for whatever reason the mother is not able to do that chore, then the girl takes over. And, I just kind of wondered what would happen if they weren't spending all those hours walking to get water or standing in lines to get water. Would they go to school? Would they take care of their families? Would they maybe have time to get a job? So the water crisis is linked to education. And Minnie in Thirst, in my middle grade book, is 12 years old. And when we first meet Minnie, she is kind of protected from the crisis to some extent by her mother taking on all of those responsibilities. And I don't want to reveal spoilers, but as we get to know Minnie, we walk down a path where Minnie has to take on her mother's responsibilities. So she has to stand in lines. Sometimes she's late to school. Sometimes she's exhausted. And it's her dream to get an education. And so she struggles. She struggles to somehow balance it all. And again, I don't want to reveal too much because I really hope that people will pick up the book and want to read it. But there is a moment of reckoning for Minnie. Can she manage to stay in school?
Mm-hmm. I think as you're speaking, I'm thinking that this is an absolutely wonderful book for parents and kids to read together, co-read, read aloud together, because it can open up so many really powerful conversations about privilege, conversations about wealth, conversations about how we can support those who don't have as much.
I love reading aloud. So I write middle grade novels, but I also write picture books. And as we all know, picture books are read aloud by a parent or a grandparent or a relative or a teacher to groups of kids. So I love reading aloud. Some of my fondest memories as a parent are reading aloud to my kids. I mean, we would read aloud even after my kids were able to read. I remember reading Junie B. Jones aloud to my kids, and we would laugh so hard. So I think that reading aloud is a way to bond. It's a way to create an emotionally rich memory around reading. Mm-hmm. Where reading becomes associated with love. Mm-hmm. And so I love the idea of reading aloud, and I am thrilled that Thirst is a global read aloud selection for 2022. And will be read aloud by teachers to classrooms across the country, and possibly in schools around the world.
That's really wonderful. This is the first I've heard about the global read aloud. So, okay. Help me understand a little bit more about this project and how people might be able to get involved with it.
Okay. So, this is the first time that my book has been selected for a global read aloud. So I'm not an expert, but I will share what I know. Global Read Aloud is a movement that was started by absolutely brilliant educator and librarian. Her name is Pernille Rip, and they choose titles every year. And there is a Global Read Aloud community. You can find them at their Facebook. They have a Facebook group where teachers and parents and librarians can join in. Their hashtag is GRA, and you can put in GRA 2022, and the titles will come up on Twitter. So what they try to do is Pernille and her staff read, I'm sure, hundreds of books, and then they choose a list. And every year they reveal the list. What happens as a result is you have all these teachers and librarians who come together and create tools to go along with the read. So, for example, Penguin Random House, my publisher, we have collaborated to make a reading discussion guide, and it's available on the Penguin website. It's also available on my website. So, I know how busy teachers are. I know how busy parents are. So we've kind of done a little bit of the work, and we've created this discussion guide, which maybe will help teachers and parents who pick up this book to have a conversation.
So important.
Yeah. And I mean, I couldn't be more excited to have Thirst be a GRA title because of how many kids it will reach.
Yeah.
That's the exciting part. Thirst also debuted on the New York Times bestseller list on the 7th of August, which again was very exciting. And again, I hope that broadens its reach.
Yeah, it's wonderful because it is a really wonderful way to bring awareness to this crisis that is facing so many people, and that I don't think people have to be facing. I think that there's a lot that we could do. I know myself. I've mentioned on the show that my family sponsored a young man to become a priest in India. And one of the things that he has accomplished is bringing health care and clean water to the village where he is serving, and we helped support that. And so there are people out there doing great things, and
there are, and I'm very encouraged by each person who is making a difference. Because, it takes every drop to create an ocean of change.
Yeah.
So, yes, there are a lot of people working hard. I have to, I would be remiss if I didn't mention water.org. It's an organization that helps with access to clean, safe drinking water across the world. And I know that I went to that website many, many times in my research process.
Yeah.
And there are other organizations. If you Google organizations that help with the water crisis, they will come up. But water.org for me was very inspiring.
Yeah. The other thing that's inspiring is your website and the body of your work. I'm checking out your website, and you've written so many wonderful books. The one there are many that jump out at me, but one that kind of jumps out at me, and again, it's because I have a connection with India, is Tea for Taj Mahal. I'm guessing that that's a wonderful book to that will introduce people to the diversity and the beauty of India.
So that one, unfortunately, is not available as a book anymore. It's only available online. It's out of print. But I believe it's still available online, and it's part of a series that the publisher had done on different countries across the world. But yes, it's a great little introductory look at India.
Yeah. What's the one thing that we would learn in reading that book? Hopefully, it's available as an ebook about India or the favorite thing about India that we would learn in that book.
Favorite thing. I kind of tried to think about what a child would want to know. And so I've done a little bit of touching upon a lot of things like India's favorite game, which is cricket, or Bollywood, which is India's film industry, which does a lot of musicals. Or the festivals and the food. So I've tried to introduce the reader to a little bit of a lot of things.
Yeah, that sounds like fun. What is your favorite? You've written picture books, you've written middle grade novels, you have a YA anthology. What's your favorite audience to write for?
See, I'm asked this question very often, and that's like asking me to pick my favorite child. And I don't know that I can do that. So there's aspects of all of the genres. Picture books, I think, are the closest to poetry. Some of them are written in rhythm and rhyme. Some of them are prose. But the language, for me, it tends to be poetic and beautiful. And then you have the marriage of the art and the words. And to me, that's magic. So I love picture books. I still read picture books. I still will occasionally buy a picture book for my adult children. They're in their 20s. But they know that about mom. So I love picture books. I do love middle grade novels because, like with Thirst, they give me the opportunity to explore a subject at far greater depth. And what I love most about writing middle grade novels is creating characters like Minnie or like Karina and Chris and Papa and Count Me In. These characters kind of feel real to me. Like they're my friends, and I have a hard time leaving them behind and moving on to the next project. But that's my favorite part of writing middle grade is creating those characters. I have dipped my toes into the YA ocean. It was a short story in an anthology, but I haven't really written any independent YA novels, and I don't know that I will. I really am enjoying the middle grade audience because they are so curious and so amazingly intelligent. And not to say that the YA audience isn't, but I think that middle grade is that sweet spot when they don't have their driver's licenses.
Mm-hmm.
They're not off on their own yet. So I kind of love that audience.
And it gives you the opportunity to create these characters like Minnie who they're at a point in their life where they need to make choices, and the choices that they make at that age can really impact the rest of their lives.
Yes, they can. And they're kind of discovering who they are. Mm-hmm. That's why that whole age group, they're coming of age, right? They're coming of age. They are discovering their agency, what they can and can't do, or what they want to do. Dreams change, kids evolve, but I do think that they're just kind of stepping out into the world, Now with Minnie, again, without spoilers, but she has to almost become an adult at 12, or at least take on adult responsibilities. And again, it happens. It does happen. It happens all over the world, where you have 12-year-olds 12, 13, who have to take on adult responsibilities. And if they don't, they're lucky, for whatever reason. It's not just economic. It can be illness in a family. It can be because their parents are not capable for whatever reason. So I do think that that's another aspect of thirst, which is not all kids have the idyllic childhood that we hope they will, right?
Right. Yeah. Yes, not all kids get to be kids.
No. Yeah. No, they don't. Yeah. No, they don't. And it's the reality.
Right.
And I think that I was asked by a kid, bookstagrammer, which I think is just fascinating. She's 12 and she already has a Instagram account that she devotes to books and asks questions and all of that. And she said, she was a little upset at me, and she said, you've made Minnie do all of these things that she shouldn't have to do at that age. And I said, yes, I have. And that's true. And in that process, maybe kids who have the luxury of a childhood will develop empathy and compassion. Because I really do believe that whether it's Count Me In or Thirst, the core of these books is the need for compassion, empathy, and how friendship can help us to get through the toughest times.
Yeah. Great themes, great lessons for kids. Great, again, as we said earlier, great launching pads for conversations.
Yes, and that has always been my desire, which is I don't provide answers, but I do provide launching pads for conversations.
Yeah. Well, I know people are going to want to know where to go to see that website that I mentioned, so tell everybody where they can connect with you.
Oh, my website is varshabajaj.com.
Okay, great. I think we could speak for hours, but unfortunately the podcast doesn't last for hours. We've had a great time speaking to the author of Thirst, a really powerful middle grade novel from our guest, Varsha Bajaj. Varsha, thanks so much for being with us.
Oh, Jed, I thank you for inviting me and giving me this opportunity to connect with your listeners. And thank you so much.
Please be sure to join us for the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Our guest will be Tim Klein. He'll be here to encourage us to set sail for pancakes. It's his debut picture book. Don't want to miss it. Want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful. Of course, we want to start by thanking our guest, Varsha Bajaj. Please be sure to check out Thirst, great middle grade novel. Also want to thank our sponsors, Jacob Monroe, Fly, 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 little birdie. You and your kids are going to love this. And talk about a delicious way to explore history, Ancient Eats by Stephanie Hansen and our friends at History Unboxed. Want to thank my team, Fatima Khan, Rory Grady, Nicole Belcastro, Mirabella Q, Rain Pan. Want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.